This is Right to Life Radio. And now, here's your host, John DeRoe.
Well, this past week, Governor Newsom has signed all of the bad abortion bills that we thought he was going to sign. We are going to go through them all. We're going to assess sort of the impact of this year's legislative session. We'll kind of go through all the bills that Jonathan's organization, California Family Council, was watching over the course of the year. But basically, this is the setup of the year in Sacramento is the state assembly, the state legislature, rather, the assembly and the Senate, have through about September 15th to pass all the bills that they are going to pass over the course of the year. And then the governor has 1 month to sign or veto everything that has been passed. So we are now in that phase, and the governor just this week signed 9 bad abortion bills. Here to talk with us about it is our good buddy, Jonathan Keller from California Family Council. After a week or two off.
Yeah.
You've been jet-setting all over the country.
Last week, I was alternately in Washington, D.C. and Orange County. Mm-hmm. And the week before that, I was just in Washington, D.C. But I basically was between Wednesday the 20th and Sunday what day is that? Sunday the 24th, I guess? Mm-hmm. Between those, Wednesday the 13th. And Sunday
I'm
the 24th.
Actually not like that interested in your travel schedule, so I don't care if you get these dates wrong. Like no one in the audience will care.
Over the course of like 12 days, I was home one night.
Okay.
It was a lot of travel.
Okay.
I'll just put it that way.
All right. Well, he's back with us here on Right to Life Radio, ladies and gentlemen. Jonathan Keller, globetrotter extraordinaire. All right.
Yes.
So, to the governor's credit, he, at the very least, issued a press release that very conveniently, for the purposes of this show, organizes all of the terrible bills that he signed.
He's depraved, but he's brazen in his depravity.
He's brazen in his depravity and organized in his depravity, which makes it a little easier to talk about. So, Governor Newsom has a press release published September 27th. Today, Governor Newsom signed 9 bills providing stronger protections for providers delivering abortion care, expanding the healthcare workforce, and protecting patient reproductive healthcare information. This action builds on California's nation-leading efforts to safeguard access to reproductive healthcare and remain a safe haven state. Keep using that language about abortion being a haven, being a safe haven, being a sanctuary, etc., including protecting patients, providers, and supporters, expanding access to care and services, and sharing California's efforts and actions with other states through the Reproductive Freedom Alliance. Then they have quotes from Governor Newsom and first partner, Jennifer Seibel Newsom.
I know that you can't see eye rolls over the radio, but
allow me to... allow us, if there were only a way for eye rolls to be heard over the radio, you would hear Jonathan and I doing the most enormous eyeballs over Jennifer Seibel Newsom going by first partner.
Just picture that scene from 30 Rock where
Liz Lemon rolls her eyes so hard that she almost breaks her eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. First off, hearing first partner, it's like you guys are in a heterosexual marriage, like you're not actually anything different from. There's no reason not to call you first lady. Secondly, first partner just always makes me think of cowboys. Like, howdy, partner. Is like she that kind of partner?
Yeah.
Or the partner, the Newsom, and Newsom, partners at law. All right. I was driving in NYPD with my partner.
That's right.
Jennifer Seibel Newsom,
first partner.
All right. So here are the bills that Governor Newsom signed this week. And then I might talk about, Jonathan, you can look at this, maybe AB 576, which I don't believe was signed, which was one of the ones that I was most concerned about. That's reimbursement for post-10-week abortion pills. I don't know the status on that. You can look at that. All right. So let's go through. Jonathan can check on that. Meanwhile, I'll go through the nature of these bills that have been signed. All right. So basically what's going on in California is, one, there's a lot of focus in the state legislature to have California not cooperate in any way with other states in the United States and their efforts to criminalize abortion, their efforts to or criminalize or in some way penalize abortion. So that's been a big focus of the California legislature this year and last year. So Senate Bill 345 was signed. This, according to Newsom's wording of it, improves protections for providers against the enforcement of other states' laws that criminalize or limit reproductive and gender-affirming healthcare services. So if you're a doctor who does an abortion in Texas and you're fleeing the law to California, well, you're fine. Okay, you can just go to California, and California basically will protect you from any enforcement action from another state. Senate Bill 487 by Tony Atkins, the leader of the Democrats in the state Senate, so you know this is important. This provides more safeguards for California abortion providers to participate in the Medi-Cal program, regardless of enforcement activities in another state, if the conduct is legal under California law. So Medi-Cal has pretty high has a bunch of standards that providers have to meet in order to get reimbursement from Medi-Cal. It's one of the many hoops Medi-Cal makes you jump through, and
which, as it should be, I would say.
As it should be,
if
yeah.
If you're going to get
I'm
tons
not
of money
knocking
from the state, then
yeah. So I'm not knocking it. That's a hoop you have to jump through. If you're trying to apply for being a Medi-Cal accepting provider, and you've got on your record as a physician, oh, I have these disciplinary violations from this other state that I used to practice in. Like I used to practice in Texas, and I had a criminal charge against me for my practice of medicine in Texas. Well, ordinarily, Medi-Cal does not look very fondly on that. This bill by Senator Atkins would basically say, yeah, if you have some disciplinary hearing from Texas because you're doing illegal abortions, we don't care. You can still qualify as a Medi-Cal accepting provider. Assembly Bill 1707 by Assemblymember Blanca Pacheco protects healthcare providers and facilities in California from state licensing actions against them based on the enforcement of hostile laws that restrict abortion and gender-affirming care in another state. Okay, so maybe you're a provider that has locations in multiple states. Maybe you've got some locations in Texas, some in California. You get busted in Texas for doing abortions, you're going to be fine in California, or for gender-affirming stuff that is outlawed in another state. All right, so that's a big thing, is basically they don't want any doctor who's in California to suffer any kind of retribution for doing illegal abortions in another state.
God forbid that a state like Texas or Florida, who is trying to protect the children of their citizens, the unborn children of their citizens or their residents, God forbid that state would say, we think that it's not great to hire a hitman in another state to kill one of these unborn children.
Right. Well, and it turns into this. It's turning into, I mean, you and I predicted this before Roe v. Wade was overturned, but since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we're turning into, it's similar in certain ways to the pre-Civil War era United States, where some states were slave states, some states were free states. And how do those states interact with each other? Do you have to return a freed slave who makes it to the North back to his owner in the South? Okay, that was a major issue before the Civil War. How are these states going to interact with each other? So basically what we're trying to do is say, no, California is not going to cooperate with any state that outlaws abortion. And there have been other bills that have been passed in the last few years to sort of establish that principle.
Which, just as a side note, John, creates all sorts of other issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to create a kind of constitutional mess in a lot of ways, I'm sure. So
you could think, if on the flip side, if you had I don't know. John, I'm trying to think of something, given the fact that Governor Newsom also just signed a bill today that deals with further restricting, I'll read the title. Governor Newsom strengthens California's nation-leading gun safety laws.
Right.
So you could imagine, on the flip side, if Texas decided, yeah, you know what? We are just going to declare that if a citizen of California comes here to Texas, we're going to say ollie ollie and free, and we will sell you any gun that you want. which currently is illegal. Like you cannot, for example, I cannot just travel to Texas and buy a handgun.
Right.
That is actually illegal. As a
Right.
California resident, I cannot buy a
can't do
handgun.
that.
I think theoretically, I haven't tried to do this in case anyone from the ATF is listening, but I have not tried to buy a long gun, but I think those are generally a little bit less restrictive.
Okay.
But in terms of handguns, I have looked at this because I've been curious in the past. Well, can I buy a gun from another state? Because California has this crazy roster. Basically, the Attorney General in the state of California has a roster of approved handguns. And if your handgun is not on that roster, you cannot buy it in the state of California.
Or outside the state.
Oh, well, you cannot. Well, first off, you cannot buy it
in California. Oh, and you can't buy it in another state.
You can't buy it in another. Well, you can't buy any handgun outside the state of California.
Okay. Yeah.
So the idea being that, like, and there are all sorts of strict penalties.
Yeah. So it's like California is introducing these state-specific laws
Right.
that have an impact on these national markets
Correct.
and these national industries.
Yeah.
And
if Texas just said, you know what, hey, we're going to pass a law that says if you come to California, we'll sell you any gun you want.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Specifically, if there's guns there that they have outlawed, we'll set up a new loophole that says you can buy that here. Now, the one wrinkle is, John, I think that some of the handgun stuff is a federal thing. I think that maybe there's a federal rule.
There's federal stuff up.
But the idea, I think, behind that holds is that deliberately trying to set up a system where you are trying to create a loophole for one state's laws.
Yeah, where you're trying to undercut, it's one state undercutting the legitimate efforts of another. And I think that it's pretty problematic in a whole lot of ways. Now, when we return, we're going to talk about more of the bills that Governor Newsom signed, more of the abortion-related bills that Governor Newsom signed this past week. This is Right to Life Radio, a production of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org, and we'll have information about our upcoming Rachel's Vineyard retreat. Stay tuned. Back with Right to Life Radio, we are discussing all of the bills that Governor Newsom signed this week relating to abortion, and maybe one bill that he conspicuously has not yet signed. So the governor has signed a good slew of 8 or 9 really bad abortion bills. We're going to go through them piece by piece. We've already talked about basically a bunch of bills that the governor signed to basically indicate California is not going to go along with any other state. If any other state takes some kind of action against a doctor for providing abortions illegally, California doesn't care. You can still be a Medi-Cal receiving doctor if you were subject to some sort of censure in another state for having provided abortion. We don't care. That's fine. So California doesn't care about poor quality doctors who are such bottom feeders that they're doing illegal procedures in another state. Come on into California. We're not going to have you be subject to any penalties. We're not going to hand you over to that other state's authorities. We're going to let you be a Medi-Cal accepting provider. We don't care because you're doing abortion, and we love abortion so much. All right. So, yeah.
I think of the fact that we do have a doctor shortage on all sorts of other issues.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear all the time about the fact that you have these reproductive health care deserts that you mention frequently.
Oh yeah, well that's how I mentioned that for genuine, authentic reproductive health care, we face a lack of providers willing to serve Medi-Cal patients and tons of women who are on Medi-Cal.
And yet,
but Planned Parenthood, when they talk about reproductive health deserts, they mean we don't have enough people doing abortions.
But in terms of real reproductive health care, there is not a similar effort to say, we really could use some OBGYNs that could come in and provide prenatal health services for women in low-income or migrant communities. Let's waive the requirements to let them come in. It's no. We have to have these super high,
let's give a grant.
Standards.
Let's give a grant to the Obrey Medical Clinics of Central California for all the great work they're doing. No, instead, let's give $1 million to Planned Parenthood. How's that sound? Now, when we return, I'm glad you brought that up, Jonathan, because I'm going to talk a little bit about why, as the YouTube clip goes, why are there so few providers who do abortions? And we're going to talk a little bit about some surveys, some information I got from some stuff produced by Charlotte Lozier Institute about the quality of the doctors who are doing abortions. And that's going to be a very interesting topic. So sit tight for the next segment. All right, so let's talk about some of these bills that Governor Newsom signed. He signed 2 bills that are designed to protect patient health information. Basically, I think the idea behind these is if you're getting abortions in California, then it'll protect your health care information so that Texas or some state that outlaws abortion won't know about it. I think the idea here is we want to facilitate people flying from Texas to California to get abortions. So let's, scrub their medical information so that docs in Texas, so that you can't hear about it in Texas. We then go to ways in which California is manipulating the insurance market. And this is the ability. This is a big thing for people to understand in the world of state-level abortion laws. He who controls the regulation of health insurance controls a ton about abortion policy. There is so much with abortion policy that is regulated at the level of regulating health insurance companies, what is covered, what isn't covered, what has to be covered, the whole setup Planned Parenthood that abortion providers have right now, where insurers are forbidden by recent state law, to charge any copay or deductible for abortion, and dependents on a insurance holder's policy can get abortions without letting the holder of the policy know. So basically, it's facilitating, for example, a 13-year-old who's on her dad's health insurance plan going in to get an abortion without her dad ever knowing it, and she doesn't have to provide any out-of-pocket costs. No copay, no deductible, nothing. And meanwhile, Planned Parenthood or whoever the abortion provider is gets the benefit of a private insurance, a big fat private insurance reimbursement. So there's all kinds of ways in which abortion... Now, those are recent laws passed over the last couple of years. These are all ways in which the regulation, the manipulation of the insurance market by California state law help facilitate... That manipulation helps to facilitate abortion in this state. So Assembly Bill 571, which Governor Newsom just signed this week, this prohibits insurers from refusing to provide malpractice insurance to a provider on the basis of them offering abortion, contraception, or gender-affirming care that is lawful in California but unlawful in another state. So if you're an insurance provider and you're like, I don't know, abortion, it's getting outlawed in all these other states. This policy, I think, might be more specifically aimed, frankly, at transgender stuff. Because I think there's a much bigger, that the health side effects of abortion are at least fairly well known to someone who's offering malpractice insurance coverage for a doctor. I think the world of transgender surgeries and the after effects of them is a real kind of Wild West frontier.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is California saying, malpractice providers, you can't forbid coverage to someone just because they're doing these surgeries that we have no idea how they're going to wind up for people, 30 years from now. So that's probably more what this is going towards. But you can see, again, how the state legislature could just pass these laws and just radically alter things with the insurance market. So the insurance companies have no choice. Okay, well, we can't consider this in our decision of whether or not to offer this person malpractice insurance.
Which, yeah, I think that on both of those fronts, John, I doubt obviously that anyone in California, certainly the Attorney General in California, and no attorney, I think, really is going to have a chance to win a lawsuit in California for malpractice regarding abortion.
Right.
But I do think that, I don't know.
Or for a policy, I doubt there's going to be a company that's going to refuse to provide a policy for someone because abortion is such a risky procedure.
Yeah. Ricardo Laura, our illustrious
insurance commissioner. Yeah.
He's not going to be looking too kindly on that.
Yeah. Ricardo Laura, Mr. I won't take money from insurance companies and then immediately took money from an insurance company almost the first second he was installed in office as the insurance commissioner. So, Assembly Bill 1720 clarifies that ultrasounds and similar medical imaging devices must be offered in licensed facilities or by licensed providers, protecting against unscrupulous uses. I think that's a shot at pregnancy centers, the idea that there might be unlicensed people doing ultrasounds at pro-life pregnancy centers. I think that's what that's sort of geared towards. Now, the last thing is this desperate push to get more providers to do abortions. This has been a multi-year effort by the state legislature to artificially goose the numbers, to increase the numbers of people who are able to do abortions, people who are trained to do abortions, people who are getting bribed, basically, to do abortions. So we saw just a year ago, the legislature, California passed a law offering student loan debt relief and scholarships and things like that for docs and nurses who agree to do abortions in underserved parts of the state. So instead of Teach for America, you've got Abort for California. It's basically what it is. That was one thing that Fresno Bee edited in a op-ed I wrote for them, where I said that the state, instead of focusing on providing prenatal care, is paying for student loan debt for people to abort the children, to abort the children of the poor in California. I said something to abort poor children in California, and I think they edited it to say to do abortions.
Wow,
something like that. They softened it a little bit. I was like, I think my original had a little extra edge there that maybe they just didn't like. So anyway, that's what happens with editing. All right. Nonetheless, what they're trying to do to increase the number of people who will do abortions is first, there's Assembly Bill 1646. This facilitates guest rotations in medical residency programs in California for residents who can no longer receive the proper training due to their program being in a state with restrictions or bans. So what they're going to try to do is, hey, if you're at University of Texas at Austin Medical School, this will help facilitate you coming over to California so you can do a rotation performing abortions. That's what this is for. Or you're in, the medical school in Idaho or something. Come to California, do a rotation over here, do some abortions, and then go back to Idaho. And then Senate Bill 385, again, another Tony Atkins bill. This allows physician assistants to provide abortions after receiving training and in compliance with protocols. So California already has lowered our standards. First, it was only doctors could do abortions. Then it was nurse practitioners can do abortions. Now it's physician assistants can do abortions. We're just lowering the standards. And look, my future sister-in-law is a physician assistant. Nothing against physician assistants.
Sure.
They're not doctors. They don't have the same training. They don't have the same expertise. This is a dumbing down of the standards because California is more concerned about getting people to do abortions than the safety of those abortions. When we return, we will talk about why. How the bottom of the barrel is being scraped for people to do abortions. That is next on Right to Life Radio. Back with Right to Life Radio, we just want to make this announcement that the next Rachel's Vineyard retreat is October 6th through the 8th. If you are interested, if you have experienced abortion in your past and you are looking for healing, whether you're a man or a woman, Rachel's Vineyard is a wonderful, wonderful program for attaining post-abortion healing. Please do get in touch with our confidential hotline if you are interested in attending this upcoming retreat. You're looking for retreatants. The number to call is 1-833-776-0023. That's 1-833-776-0023. 833-776-0023. All right. Jonathan, with that resolved, and that's a very important thing to make sure that we always advertise for our Rachel's Vineyard.
Absolutely.
I want to go to a pretty interesting piece that I found, and this is kind of a couple years old. It's from 2019, and it was put together by our friends from the Charlotte Lozier Institute. And
one of the best pro-life
Yes.
research organizations.
Yes.
And by
absolutely.
pro-life, I mean they are an alternative to the explicitly, egregiously pro-abortion Alan Guttmacher Institute.
Right, exactly. And they do a lot of great work, sort of researching stuff for issues related to abortion. And I came across this. Piece that was published by them in 2019. One of their researchers, Tessa Longbuns, I got to meet when I was at the Vita Institute, published by Notre Dame, sponsored by Notre Dame, which is like the best pro-life conference in the country. And the this piece is called "Doctors Who Perform Abortions: Their Characteristics and Patterns of Holding and Using Hospital Privileges." This is a really interesting piece, okay? And what it's talking about here is the characteristics of the people who actually perform abortions. Who are these doctors who actually do abortions? What are they like? What's their background like? What kind of people? I mean, I think for a lot of us, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, I think a lot of us would say, boy, you're the person who actually does the abortions. Huh. I think a lot of people are okay with being pro-choice, but they don't like abortion. I would venture to say probably most people who identify as pro-choice don't look at abortion as something fun or nice or good, or maybe they look at it as a sad, unfortunate necessity or something like that.
Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
Imagine that you are at a family barbecue.
Yeah.
And your sister brings over her new boyfriend.
Yeah.
And you're all standing around, you're grilling up some brisket or burgers or steaks or whatever it is, and you're asking what he does, and he seems like he's a interesting guy, but a little weird. And then you say, "What do you do?" And he goes, "Oh, I euthanize dogs for the SPCA."
Right.
Now,
I think a lot of people would be like, who's the kind of guy who signs up to be the guy who euthanizes dogs for the SPCA?
Now, I think you'd say, John, that is actually probably, unlike, I think, abortion, that's probably a necessary job in our society.
It probably is.
Because there are a incredible preponderance, a plethora of dogs and cats and other animals that are rounded up and, but still, the person who actually has to do that,
people would ask questions. What kind of a person does it?
Yeah.
And maybe the people who euthanize dogs are perfectly normal, healthy, wonderful, well-adjusted people. However, I have always had, now this is opinion, and this is the informed opinion of two doctors that I'm very close to, my mom and dad. Okay, so my mom and dad are both physicians. They were both very successful physicians. Dad was at Valley Children's Hospital for many, many years. He just recently retired. My mom is a dermatologist for many, many years locally. And my dad always was of the opinion that the doctors who perform abortions are often bottom of the barrel people, that they are often people who do not retain board certification. So they are looking for some way to make money to do something that does not require board certification. And that basically, if you were a very accomplished and successful doctor, for the most part, many of those people, not to say that there are no doctors who perform abortions who are smart or accomplished or successful, but for the most part, if you don't have to perform abortions, you don't do it. It's easier to be theoretically pro-choice than to be that level of hands-on practically pro-choice. So this study was done in 2019 looking at doctors in Florida who perform abortions. And it revealed some interesting statistics. Now, my dad had that opinion that people who performed abortions were bottom dwellers. This is actually giving some stats looking at a cohort of doctors from Florida who perform abortions. Now, of the doctors who perform abortions, fully 27% of them went to an international medical school, not a medical school based in the United States of America. That's a little weird. Just going to point that out, okay? Of this group of doctors surveyed, now, international medical school isn't everything. It's Miami, more of an international flair. I'm not saying every doctor who goes to an international medical school is a bum, but there are some people who go to international medical schools to avoid the higher standards at American medical schools. There is also the question of whether or not this doctor is someone who accepts Medicaid. As we stated, Jonathan, earlier on, not everyone can accept Medicaid. You have to apply for Medicaid, so it's not a guarantee. 57.6% of these doctors don't accept Medicaid. Now, whether that's because they couldn't apply, they couldn't qualify, that's a different question. Fully 48% of these doctors had either a malpractice claim, a disciplinary action, a public complaint, or a criminal charge against them. 48% of all these Florida abortion doctors had one of those. Now, a malpractice claim is, that's a little different from all the others. If you're an OB, getting at least one malpractice claim is not exactly a rare thing. But I thought that was significant. I think the most significant, though, was board certification. Fully 44% of the doctors in Florida doing abortions were not board certified. Not board certified. Now, that doesn't mean
45%.
Yeah.
That's almost half for those of you in Rio Linda.
Right. Now, board certification isn't necessarily everything, and there are some doctors doing certain kinds of things for whom they don't necessarily need board certification. But board certification is kind of the standard for, are you up to date on everything that's going on in medicine? Are you able to stay board certified and consistent? It's a standard of quality that 44% of these abortion doctors were not meeting. And of those who were not, now, beyond that, we just look at the question of how many of these doctors had admitting privileges at a local hospital. And that's the thing. When a hospital gives you admitting privileges, they have to go through your background. They have to go through your record. They have to look at, does this guy have, are we going to give this person admitting privileges at our hospital? Are we going to tie ourselves to this individual in certain ways? Does this person have a history of, does this person have a history of malpractice claims? Does this person have a history of disciplinary action from the state? Has this person, had a criminal complaint, God forbid? 50%, only 50% of these doctors, 43 of 85, 50.6%, had admitting privileges. So this is, I think, kind of a stunning look at this cohort. Now, it's not the hugest study. They're looking at 85 doctors in Florida who do abortions. These 85 doctors in Florida who do abortions. But what we're seeing from this random sampling is that this is not a really high, this is
probably not winning the Nobel Prize or the corollary for medicine.
These guys are not elite. Okay, this is not the best of the best. And I think this gets to what we talked about in the last segment, Jonathan, that California is trying to increase the number of doctors who do abortions. California, for all that California does to facilitate abortion, we fund it through Medi-Cal with state dollars. We give supplemental state funding for larger reimbursements through Medi-Cal for doctors who do abortions. We loosen up licensure rules so you can start abortion clinics. We let nurse practitioners do them. We're going to let physician assistants do them. We let doctors do it. We are bending over backwards in California to facilitate abortions.
Yes.
And yet, for all that,
still can't get enough.
We still can't get enough people to do it, to the point where there's this massive push nationwide. I think this is a big part of the reason for the nationwide push for the abortion pill, because that's the big advantage, if you will, of the abortion pill. You don't need a doctor that involved. You just need the doctor to write the prescription. And that's it. That's why they're trying to have the abortion pill with almost no in-person interaction with a doctor whatsoever. So I think underlying that push is the fact that people who do abortions aren't very good doctors in many, many cases.
And I think, John, most, like you were saying, it's one thing, going back to my crude example of the
guy who euthanizes dogs. Yeah.
Yes. I would assume that, again, I don't want to slander these people that are in veterinary medicine, because maybe they could be wonderful people.
Yeah.
My grandfather, my dad's dad, I don't know if I've ever told you this. My dad's dad was the county veterinarian for Cheyenne County, Kansas.
Wow. Well, there you go.
He grew up he served in World War II. He got his degree in agriculture from Kansas State. Mm-hmm. He delivered a lot of cows, but
he probably had to shoot a lot of horses.
Yeah. I mean, as a sad side effect of his job, he had to go and euthanize animals, I'm sure.
Well, and it's the thing, like, I'm sure your grandpa was not like, oh, my favorite part of the job,
right,
offing this cow with cancer.
Right.
No one grows up thinking, no one grows up thinking, oh boy, I can't wait to be a vet and euthanize animals. Like, it's an unfortunate part of the job. But I think the profound moral issue of abortion, a much profounder issue than euthanizing animals.
More profounderer.
I think it's such that just people know that there's something deeply disturbing to it. And as a result, they just don't want to get involved. All right, we'll dig a little bit more into this after the break. This is Right to Life Radio, a production, as always, Right to Life Central California, rtlcc.org. Back with Right to Life Radio. Over this week, Governor Newsom signed most of the bad abortion bills, but there's one that's still hanging out there, and Jonathan and I are going to keep our eyes on AB 576. So this bill would allow for Medi-Cal to reimburse doctors prescribing the abortion pill beyond 10 weeks into pregnancy. The current FDA guidelines on the abortion pill say it's only allowed to be prescribed through the first 10 weeks of pregnancy. Otherwise, you're prescribing it off-label. Normally, Medi-Cal's not going to reimburse you for a wackadoodle off-label prescription of a drug. And basically, this bill would allow doctors to get reimbursed for this wackadoodle off-label, more dangerous prescription of the abortion pill. There was another woman who died this past month from the abortion pill in Nevada. And we're going to watch this to see if California is just going to be like whole hog. This will basically eliminate any restriction time frame wise in California on when people can use the abortion pill. So we will see how it goes. But Jonathan, you had one last thought as we close
I will
out.
say I just think it's interesting because there was a big hullabaloo that Newsom vetoed this transgender-related bill.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, he signed all of these abortion-related bills.
Right.
And I think if I was Newsom and I was trying to possibly run for president, you see that there are all these parental revolts going on around the country about transgender issues on campus, in high schools and everything among minor children. And yet, it seems like, sadly, abortion is a winning issue in almost every one of these referendums and even in swing states.
Mm-hmm.
So Newsom seems to be, once again, positioning himself frighteningly well to
maybe jump in
from stage right if they shuffle Biden off stage left.
I do not disagree with you. I think every week more and more people are sort of thinking it's more and more likely that Newsom might somehow wind up being the presidential nominee for 2024. I think Ted Cruz thinks it's going to be Michelle Obama, but he's the only one I've heard say that. That'll do it for Right to Life Radio. We'll see you next time on Power Talk.